What's up, guys? We are back with another review, but we are not talking about a toy today. Well, not directly anyway. We're talking about a book. So this is the follow-up to the first book review that I did. Well, book review. We're just going to sort of chat about it. So we're taking a look at The Toys That Time Forgot, Volume 2 by Blake Wright. And the first book came out a few years ago. It was a Kickstarter project, and this is more of the same. So it's a follow-up to that book, giving us more about the unproduced, forgotten, lost toys of the past 30 years. Something that I instantly backed when it went up on Kickstarter. I knew that I had to have it. The minute that he announced it was coming, I was ready, and I'm eagerly awaiting Volume 3. So we're going to talk about what's inside this, what it's all about, and frankly, me just tell you to go buy it. And if you are interested, I'm not going to go into great detail on all of the content so you can figure it out for yourself, but the best way, and I believe the cheapest way to do it, is to get it on Big Bad Toy Store because they have copies in stock. I'll put a link down below to the product page. So essentially what we're talking about here are toys that never got made, things that died before they hit the shelves, things that are exceedingly rare and never finished their run, things that never made it past the initial design phase, things like that. So let's open her up and take a look. So the way this book is divided up is into sort of eras of toys. So we start with the golden age of toys, and that would be 70s, 80s era, and we kick things off with two crazy properties. One being the Knickerbocker Lord of the Rings line, which, I mean, they're just exceedingly rare. I've never seen one in person. I know about them. I know their kind of mythical status, but there's so much in here, from their development to their creation to the ultimate demise. Partially done sculpt work that's in here, fully carded samples, advertisements, all of that. And then Blake rolls right into a line that I didn't even know existed until a couple years ago when they were unearthed, essentially, in a collection. And that's The Last Starfighter, one of my favorite movies as a kid that never had a line that really got off the ground. And there was a whole collection of figures that could have come out, and it's all chronicled here in great detail, thanks to the fact that he was able to get access to these figures from a collection that most folks didn't even know existed. He kind of keeps rolling through there with a look at the Kenner Superpowers line, which is a line that I've never personally collected. I've kind of made it apparent on this channel that I'm not a huge DC guy, but the fact that this is exciting and enthralling tells you just how much is going on here. That I'm not interested in this line, but it's so fun to read from the inception to the kind of bubble with this line almost, and then its ultimate demise because of how it ended. It's just exciting to see the progression of things here. And then he rolls right into a line that is near and dear to my heart, the Inhumanoids. And this is a gruesome cartoon for a kid in the 80s with some wild toys, and we get to see some things that I didn't know ever existed, things that never made it out, things like the gag oil and things like that. It's just a crazy spread of artwork, pre-production designs, prototypes, all kinds of crazy stuff in here that would have just blown my child mind apart in the 80s. And it's expertly crafted, expertly detailed, just showing you how all of this stuff went from initial concept to, again, demise. Now, a good chunk of this book is taken up by one particular property, and that may sound like a negative, but it's definitely not. Probably my favorite section of this entire book is, I mean, it's probably not hard to imagine, TMNT related. There is a ton of information here from the original push from this line into the absolute juggernaut that it became, from how it was created, how it kind of got started, how it became full steam ahead. But what's really amazing here is seeing some of these original prototypes, seeing all, and I mean all of this pre-production, unused concept art for figures that never got made, never saw the light of day, like Mollusk Man or the Pigeon Mutant or Armadillo, things like that. There is so much stuff in here that is just worth the price of admission on its own for a TMNT fan or anybody that's even remotely interested in this particular line of toys, because frankly there is a lot of information here that your average TMNT collector likely has no idea about, and it just goes over so well how much this line progressed and where it ultimately ended up and why. Blake rolls into the 90s, or quote-unquote the dark times, with the weird, the wacky, the very often gross lines of toys. Things like Kenner's Boogers, which I'll let you read into. I'm not going to spoil that one here. Or things like the Playmates Toxic Crusaders, a line that was very near and dear to my heart. But more importantly, the legendary, and I cannot emphasize legendary enough, Unproduced Battletoads lines, or Unproduced Star Wars toys, or the Dinotopia line. Things like the Resource Magic the Gathering line. Did you know that that one existed? What about the Resource Crash Bandicoot or Resource Gex? There's a whole bunch of stuff here that goes into detail on some of the weird, lesser known 90s lines that probably have escaped a lot of folks' memory at this point just because there was so much weird stuff back then. Things kind of switch up a little bit with a line that I never knew even remotely existed as we roll into the Gilded Age, as he calls it. 2001, from Playmates, of all companies, The Ripping Friends. So The Ripping Friends was a show on Fox Kids that was created by John Crick-Falusi, creator of Ren and Stimpy. It was very Ren and Stimpy-esque in its style and feel, but I never knew that there was a toy line, and this kind of goes into detail on where it came from, of course, and where it ultimately ended up, which was pretty much nowhere. But then he kind of rolls back into something that he did in the first book by giving us a taste of things that never made it in the Palisades Muppets line, which is another line that kind of has legendary status these days because of just all of the things that it did right, but ultimately it just still never succeeded. It still ended up getting canned, along with the company itself. The book closes out on a line that I'd never expected to see in here, and I'm really glad Blake decided to throw this one in because, frankly, this does fit in here, and it's honestly a sign of the times, really, because this one is Kickstarter focused. This was the first Kickstarter that I ever backed. So the Warpo Toys Kickstarter, and they produced, as far as I'm concerned, a really stellar line of 3 3/4 inch figures based on the Cthulhu mythos. So they created the Legends of Cthulhu, which had various 3 3/4 inch line of figures that had monsters and various cultists, things like that, all stuff that was entrenched in that Lovecraftian mythology, even going so far as to make a giant Cthulhu, which sits proudly in my display. But this line was one that I had to have, and it was the first thing that I instantly kind of jumped onto when it became available on Kickstarter. But it's cool to see where this was going to go, what they wanted to do with this, but ultimately just couldn't sustain it because their second Kickstarter failed. That would have been the Don't Cuddle the Krampus plush toy, which was very much My Pet Monster inspired. So that one was something that I really was excited to read about, and it's just a great kind of run through of how this company started up and where they ultimately ended up and what they hope to be able to potentially do one day if the stars kind of align. So yeah, that's a quick look at the Toys That Time Forgot Volume 2. I really can't stress how engrossing this book is, and that's really the only way to describe it. It is engrossing. You really have to read it to understand just how much information is here. I can't do that by just saying, hey, look at all these lines he talks about. But there is a lot of stuff in here that you might not expect to see. So things like, you know, the Dinotopia line, or the Battletoads line, or a 10-page spread on the Ninja Turtles, which has so much fantastic artwork in there, or the stuff about Warpo Toys and the things that we're going to see as more Kickstarters come about, and just kind of the idea of new modern toy lines that just can't ever kind of get their legs. So there is a tremendous amount of information here. You could probably find this elsewhere if you really scoured and looked hard enough, but this is the best way to kind of just indulge yourself in a tremendous amount of toy history, and Blake's done a really great job of just putting it all together in a frankly fantastic package. These books are of the utmost quality, so I would urge you to take a look at it. Go ahead and get yourself a copy. See if you can track down Volume 1 as well. Again, I'll put a link down below for the Big Bad Toy Store copy of Volume 2. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's going to do it for the Toys That Time Forgot Volume 2. Go check it out, and until next time.